The Zephyrian War Council had gathered in their crystalline command chamber, their translucent forms shimmering with anticipation. For cycles they had worked on their masterpiece, the Void Render, a weapon so advanced that it could theoretically tear holes in space-time itself. No shield technology in the known galaxy could withstand its concentrated antimatter beam. "The human colony ship approaches," announced War Prime Kethax, his voice resonating through the chamber like wind chimes in a storm. They refused to surrender New Terra. Deploy the Void Render. The massive weapon, stretching nearly 2 kilometers in length, hummed to life. Energy readings spiked across every sensor as exotic matter channeled through crystalline conduits. The Zephyrians had spent decades perfecting this technology, drawing from the collective scientific knowledge of 17 conquered civilizations. "Impossible for them to defend against," muttered Science Secondary Veloth. "No known material can withstand concentrated antimatter at this scale." Aboard the human colony ship Defiant Hope, Captain Sarah Chen watched the readings with grim determination. Her ship carried 50,000 civilians, farmers, teachers, children, all seeking a new home on New Terra. Behind her, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the tactical station. "That weapon. Our computers can't even classify it. Energy readings are off the charts." "Options?" Chen asked curtly. "We could retreat," suggested Navigator Walsh. "Live to fight another day." Chen shook her head. 50,000 people have already sold everything they owned for passage. New Terra is humanity's best shot at expansion beyond the Sol system. We don't run. In the engineering bay, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb was having what others might call a very bad day. The ship's defensive systems were completely inadequate against whatever the aliens were charging up. But Webb had something the Zephyrians didn't account for: 30 years of fixing impossible problems with insufficient resources and an unhealthy amount of stubbornness. "Chief," came the captain's voice over the comm, "I need a miracle." Webb looked around at the spare parts, salvaged components, and emergency supplies scattered throughout engineering. His eyes settled on something that made him grin, a dangerous expression on the weathered face of a man who'd once jury-rigged a fusion reactor using coffee filters and prayer. "Captain, I've got an idea." "But you're not going to like it." The Void Render reached critical charge. Across the galaxy, scientists would have marveled at the elegant destruction about to unfold. The weapon fired. A lance of pure annihilation, bright enough to blind sensors, screamed across space toward the human vessel. The Zephyrians watched their sensors, expecting to see the ship simply cease to exist. Instead, something impossible happened. The beam struck what appeared to be empty space 50 meters in front of the human ship and stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed. Stopped, as if it had hit an immovable wall. "What is that?" Kethax's voice cracked with disbelief. Through their enhanced viewers, they could see it. A rough patchwork barrier that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and sheer bloody-mindedness. Cargo containers, hull plating, even what appeared to be kitchen appliances, all held together by magnetic clamps and welding joints that glowed white-hot under the assault. Webb's voice echoed through the Defiant Hope. "She's holding, Captain. The debris field is distributing the impact across multiple vectors. Antimatter's nasty, but it's still just energy. Energy can be redirected." The Zephyrians increased power. The makeshift barrier began to buckle and melt, but Webb was already moving. Using the ship's industrial fabricators and cargo manipulators, he began cycling fresh debris into the barrier while pulling the melted sections away. It was like watching a man rebuild a wall while artillery pounded it. "Impossible," whispered Veloth. The calculations, the energy requirements. How is he maintaining structural integrity? What they couldn't see was Webb in the cargo bay, manually operating heavy machinery that should have required a full crew, his hands bleeding from the heat of the controls, his eyes bloodshot from welding flash, muttering a steady stream of creative profanity that would have made a pirate blush. The Void Render overheated. Warning klaxons blared throughout the Zephyrian vessel as their perfect weapon began consuming itself. The exotic matter containment started failing. "Shut it down," ordered Kethax, but it was too late. The weapon that had taken decades to build and represented the pinnacle of Zephyrian engineering ate itself alive in a cascade failure that turned 2 kilometers of advanced technology into a twisted pile of cooling metal and shattered crystals. In the sudden silence that followed, Captain Chen opened a channel to the Zephyrian flagship. "This is Captain Chen of the Defiant Hope. I believe you wanted to discuss terms for New Terra?" Later, as the Zephyrians retreated to lick their wounds and reconsider their aggressive expansion policies, Webb sat in the mess hall with a beer and a med pack, nursing his burns. "Chief," asked Rodriguez, "how did you know that would work?" Webb took a long sip and grinned. "Kid, you spend enough time fixing things that shouldn't work with parts that shouldn't fit. You learn something important. The universe doesn't care what's supposed to be impossible. It only cares what actually is." The colony ship continued toward New Terra, leaving behind a debris field that would puzzle xenoarchaeologists for centuries, the remains of a perfect weapon, defeated by spare parts, stubbornness, and the uniquely human ability to make the impossible work just long enough to matter. In the end, the Zephyrians learned a valuable lesson about humanity. They didn't need to understand how something worked to make it work anyway. And sometimes that was more than enough.